Are you looking for a new side hustle that can generate thousands of pounds worth of passive income that, perhaps more importantly, is completely tax-free? Well, have I got the solution for you. Simply build a bridge in the 1700s and reap the rewards. The dropshipping game has dropped, guys. Crypto, more like crapto. This is where it's at, the Swinford Toll Bridge, and today we're going to talk about it. My name is John. Welcome to Auto Shenanigans. Why not consider subscribing? Swinford Toll Bridge is a toll bridge in Swinford. It crosses over the River Thames as part of a village that's mostly a waterworks found to the west of Oxford. The name Swinford is derived from the words swine and ford because in the old days the farmers would transport their livestock, mostly pigs, on foot from the farms in the Oxfordshire countryside to the markets at Ensham, crossing over the River Thames on the way via a ford, a swine ford. In 1299, someone, an earl or whatever, thought, hang on, I can make a bit of money here. So they set up a ferry or boat service offering a better way of crossing the river in exchange for a small fee. And this would be the first recorded instance of a toll being charged to cross the river here at Swinford. This would operate for well over 300 years, but not without issue. For example, in 1636, a boat capsized, resulting in the loss of all on board, and similar accidents kept on occurring, especially in winter. Eventually, someone got around to inventing bridges, and the landowners at the time decided to build the first Swinford Toll Bridge, opening in 1752. Trouble is, they ordered the Bridge for Beginners set from IKEA made of chipboard and MDF, and with the bridge being built to a suboptimal standard, it lasted but a handful of years before it all fell apart. And nobody bothered to replace it, so it was back to the ferry boat, or if you were a peasant, using the ford, the swine ford. A proper bridge would arrive some years later in the 1760s after a bloke called Willoughby Bertie, the Earl of Abington, bought the ferry and land on either side of the river. He didn't actually want to build a bridge, but was coerced into it by King George, as in the king. He was getting pissed off with having to cross the river via a ferry on a road that, at the time, was the main road between London and Wales, basically what we'd call the A40. So he suggested Willoughby sort it out and build a bridge, but why not charge a toll to cover the costs? Willoughby still wasn't keen, but having thought about it, realised that he could set things up so that the situation was heavily weighted in his favour. Somehow he managed to get the government to agree and pass an act known as the Swinford Bridge Act of 1767, which Willoughby no doubt wrote himself. It's a bit of paperwork that sets out the rules associated with the bridge, but perhaps in a rush to get the bridge built as per the King's wishes. I'm not sure anyone read it properly because contained within the Act were additional clauses regarding the income made by the bridge. It was agreed that Willoughby would operate and maintain the bridge at his cost, charging a toll for its use, and should the bridge be closed, he is to provide a replacement ferry service to get people across the river. Fair enough, but as part of the deal, any income generated by the bridge would be tax-free, the structure will not be subject to any capital gains tax nor any inheritance tax. Basically, this bridge was going to earn the government sweet f*** all. So they all happily agreed, and the Earl got the bridge built with it opening in 1769. And there it is, the Swinford Toll Bridge, towering over the River Thames at a whopping 4.5 metres in height and something like 100 metres in length. Massive, it is not, but it is pretty, having been made out of locally sourced organic limestone. Of course, it's had some light repairs, maintenance and restoration work done over the 250 years it's been around, including the complete rebuilding of the centre section following a collapse in 1888. At the time, building materials had come a long way, and rather than use a bit of crappy stone, they used steel girders, replacing most of the original centre section. However, the bridge still looks the same as it always did because they hid the steel within a stone fascia. There are 9 arches that make up the bridge, with only the centre arch being used for boat navigation. I get the impression that the bill was built as low as they could get away with because it's cheaper. In any case, the bridge is still here, and over 250 years later, it's still charging a toll for you to cross it because the Swinford Bridge Act of 1767 is a piece of legal legislation that remains in place today. That means whoever owns the bridge is generating an income according to the Act, so tax-free. There is a small catch, though. When the Bridge Act was set up, I'm not sure our mate Willoughby thought about that thing called inflation. It probably hadn't been invented. And the Act stipulated that the crossing fee was to be the equivalent of 1p. Because it was set out in law, if you will, this fee couldn't be increased, which was probably fine to start with, but a couple of hundred years later, 1p in fees isn't going to get you very far. But rules is rules, and it's why today the toll bridge has an oddly low price. That said, following some ownership changes and someone managing to bend the rules, today you'll pay 5p to cross the bridge in an ordinary car and up to 20p if you've got a double-decker bus, although that is still cheap. Adjusted to modern money, we should probably be paying in the region of about £2.50, but the Bridge Act enforces a minimal fee. If the owner could, they'd increase the toll tomorrow. Not that it isn't a nice little money earner, it's said that the owners do very well out of the bridge, which they bought at auction in 2010. It was suggested that the council buy the bridge and put an end to all of this tax-free toll nonsense, but they couldn't afford the £1 million price tag, so it remains in private ownership. And it's a massive pain in the arse. It's reported that the queues and traffic in the area are excessive because of the antiquated bridge that, yes, charges a low fee of 5p, but they insist that it's cash. I don't remember the last time I saw a 5p piece, and it's the same for unsuspecting motorists who arrive at the toll booth to be met by Grumpy Gary, only to then realise they haven't handled actual currency for over 10 years. But if it's such a massive pain, why don't we just build another bridge crossing the river? It's 2026, that should be easy enough. Yeah, about that. The Swinford Bridge Act of 1767 isn't going to allow you to do that. Willoughby thought that bit through, and a clause in the legislation says that there are to be no other bridges crossing the River Thames within a 3-mile area, creating himself a nice little monopoly, which still stands today. It's written in the legislation, so even if you wanted to, you'll find the legal battles and hassles make it not worth the effort. It's quite funny, really, and since the Bridge Act is still in place today, the earnings are completely tax-free. How much earnings? Well, it's difficult to say for sure, but estimates suggest that the bridge pulls in around £200,000 a year, meaning if you bought it in 2010, it's already paid for itself, and some, even after you factor in things like maintenance and repairs. It's a lovely little business. And it's not the only one. This is the Whitchurch Toll Bridge that opened under the Whitchurch Bridge Act of 1792. Basically, it's the same arrangement in terms of tax dodging, but it is rather nice to look at, I think, so worth a mention. Perhaps that's one of the benefits of these bridges being privately owned. It would seem that, for the most part, these bridge owners are keen to retain the originality of the structures in an effort to preserve a little bit of history. And when you think that some of these bridges are nearly as old as the United States, that's fine with me. And I think it's nice to have these interesting and quirky transport solutions. It is a tax dodge, though. However, a tax dodge that was created in the 1700s by someone who didn't want to build a bridge in the first place, but it was so watertight it still stands today, like a bridge over water. And it turns out there are several bridges around the country that are set up with their own bridge acts that do vary slightly, but ultimately they're all a way to generate an income, avoid paying taxes, and they're all copying the model or legislation set out by Willoughby in 1767, the OG passive income generating side hustler. So what have we learned? Well, if you'd like to set up your own tax-free passive income stream, be born in the 1700s, buy a ferry crossing, create some legislation heavily weighted in your favour, get the stupid king to sign it off, build a bridge, and then sit back to watch the money roll in. And over 250 years later, there are still people doing the exact same thing. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care. Bye-bye.